Hello and welcome to this third Sunday of Lent. You remember last week we spoke about Abraham and the promises made to Abraham that he would be a father of a great nation, of many nations, and that there would be a place for rest in him. Today we're going to look at Moses, who's mentioned in the second reading today as we talk about the giving of the Ten Commandments. He was called by God, like Abraham, on a special mission. And on the way from Egypt to the Promised Land, which is part of his journey, God takes him and his people to Mount Sinai. And there God enters into a covenant, not with an individual this time, but with an entire nation. The covenant between God and Moses is a pivotal moment in biblical history. It establishes Moses as the leader of the Israelites and sets forth the laws and the commandments that the Israelites were to follow. This covenant shaped the Israelite nation and still influences the followers of God today. With Abraham, the terms were quite gracious and unilateral. Abraham simply had to believe. Now God says, having saved you after the crossing of the Red Sea, I want you to live like my people. I want you to live in such a way that people can tell that you are my people and that you will bring glory to my name. And so, in a summary fashion, he lays out the Ten Commandments. The first commandments are centered on worshipping only the one true God, observing the Sabbath and honouring one's parents, and other commandments which are focused on moral issues like prohibiting murder, adultery, theft and dishonesty. The Ten Commandments were established as the ethical and spiritual code that it was to shape the Israelite society. The Ten Commandments provided a concise expression of God's expectations for his people. The covenant between God and Moses was a defining moment. It bound them in a special relationship with God, where he promised to be their God and make them his treasured people, so long as they followed his laws. The covenant made at Mount Sinai shaped every aspect of Israelite society. He is believed to have been the only person to have seen God face to face. Moses was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. And this journey is remembered and celebrated at the Passover. God's promised to be with him in this role. Moses was given the Torah by God on Mount Sinai, the commandments. Moses formed a covenant with God that, as God's chosen people, the Israelites would keep those commandments. The Mosaic covenant was added alongside the Abrahamic covenant so that the people of Israel would know how to conduct their lives until the seed, the Christ, comes and makes the complete and perfect sacrifice. Towards the sacrifices of the Mosaic covenant was the only point. The Mosaic covenant was not given for salvation. The law was not given so that by keeping it the people could be saved. Keeping the law doesn't save. Rather, the law keeps and prepares a person for salvation by faith. The law was given that man might realize that they cannot do what God wants them to do, even when God writes it down on the tablets of stone. Man is helpless and hopeless when left to himself, and he realized that his only hope is to receive the righteousness of God by faith alone in Jesus Christ. We read in Galatians. Arguably, the most important and direct tie between Jesus and Moses is the fact that they both delivered life-altering commandments to their people. Matthew, unlike the other gospel writers, was careful to point out that Jesus delivered his sermon, much like Moses, from a mountain. By fulfilling every jot and tittle of the law of Moses, a point that would have been especially important for Matthew's audience, he embodied every principle of the higher law that he taught in all of his sermons. The essence of the first covenant was a contract with a promise, sealed in blood. God told his people that if they were to keep all the laws that he gave them at Mount Sinai, they will be greatly blessed in the land that he was going to give them. At first glance, this may have seemed like a great thing to consider, but consider the implications. The problem comes when you have to keep all those laws. The problem with the covenant that God established through the law of Moses on Sinai is that the people were unable to keep their end of the contract. Who could live a life in which they never failed at any point of the law given to Moses? As Paul said in Galatians, righteousness could not be gained through the law. To the Jews who might complain, well, why did he make us go through this whole charade in the first place? God might reply, this is no charade. In his mind, it was as if his son Jesus had been slain all along. He gave the law of Moses as a teacher, a tutor. God needed to prepare a people through whom he could bless the world. And besides, it's not as if he did not tell the people of Israel that he would be making a new and greater covenant founded on better promises. But more about this in coming weeks. For now, let us try to live that law of Moses by living out the Beatitudes, which were also given on the mountain by Jesus himself, which he gave us in preparation for this new covenant, which we'll hear about in a few weeks' time. God bless you.